Welcome to our channel, the fastest and most complete update of news, analysis, and fascinating predictions about the movies Beyond the Gates. Here, you will be immersed in thrilling stories, unexpected developments, and in-depth analysis to help you better understand the mysterious world that the movie brings. Vernon stood motionless in the middle of the dark, empty room. The only light coming in from the window gap covered by old, frayed curtains, creating a line across his gaunt face. In his hand was an old, crumpled photo of Nicole. In the rare happy days before everything turned to hell. Every time he looked into the eyes in that photo, Vernon's chest tightened. He couldn't stop thinking about Nicole's choked cries. Her weak cries for help when she was held captive by the cruel hands of Leslie, the woman he once thought was harmless. It all started like a slow-motion nightmare. Nicole disappeared the afternoon after leaving the university. No message, no trace, only a broken phone in the drain next to the parking lot. All clues led to dead ends. The police only gave meaningless reassurances. But Vernon, with the intuition of a war veteran, knew clearly that this was not a random disappearance. Inside him, a fire burned, both the pain of losing a child and the madness of a man deprived of everything. Leslie used to be an acquaintance of Vernon's family. They used to have Thanksgiving meetings, times sharing everyday stories over a cup of tea. But what Vernon did not know was that Leslie had developed a sick obsession with Nicole, a twisted feeling mixed with jealousy, possessiveness, and hatred repressed since childhood. To Leslie, Nicole was a symbol of everything she did not have: youth, beauty, attention. When Vernon discovered the truth, every cell in his body burned with rage. Nicole was found 46 days after her disappearance, skinny, distraught, speechless. She was locked in the basement of a rundown suburban house Leslie had rented under a false name. The physical and emotional wounds could not be erased by medicine or comfort. His Nicole had been torn to shreds by the madness of a seemingly harmless man. Leslie was arrested, but only held temporarily for lack of direct evidence. Vernon knew that justice never came quickly enough for people like her. And so he decided to end things himself. He began to plot coldly, exactly as he had done during his time undercover in Afghanistan. He studied Leslie's habits, tracked her every move, tapped into the camera system around the apartment complex where she had rented a room after being released from parole. Vernon took his time. His anger was not a flash of fire, but a slow-burning lava, ready to burn everything down when the time was right. He wanted Leslie to feel layers of punishment, not just physical, but mental. Vernon started with anonymous messages sent to Leslie's inbox, hand-cut newspaper clippings of repentance, of death, of forgiveness that never came. Then came the strange power outages in the middle of the night, the constant knocking at 3 a.m., the shadowy figure passing by the window even though Leslie knew she lived alone. He was making her live the same fear Nicole had endured, the fear of being watched, manipulated, imprisoned in her own mind. On the fourth week, Vernon broke into Leslie's apartment. He did nothing, just left a picture of Nicole on the pillow, a long strand of hair, and a handwritten note: "I'm looking." Leslie panicked, called the police, but there was no sign of vandalism. No strange traces. Leslie, who had been in control, began to fall apart. She drank every night, avoided going out, and barely slept. Vernon didn't just want her to break down, he wanted Leslie to face the truth about herself. He sent her a stack of documents, psychiatric notes, old files, copies of school records, which documented the bullying and violence Leslie had committed since she was a child. He wanted her to understand that this time the punishment wasn't coming from Vernon, it was coming from her own twisted self. On the last night, Vernon took Leslie to the place where she had kept Nicole, but this time, Leslie was locked inside. The room was cold, the walls were painted white with Nicole's panicked scribbles. The rusty iron bed and the photo Vernon had left in the middle of the room, a photo of Leslie smiling at a festival, next to Nicole. Vernon did not torture her with blood or violence. He left her there, facing her own memories, her sins. And he left. 3 days later, Leslie was found by the police, exhausted, babbling unconsciously, unable to distinguish between hallucination and reality. She was taken to a mental hospital, no longer able to harm anyone, or herself. Vernon did not return to the hospital where Nicole was being treated. He knew that nothing he did could erase his daughter's painful memories, nor turn back time. But in his heart, a part of him was at peace, because the punishment had finally been carried out, in the cruelest but most just way. On top of a hill, under the shade of an ancient oak tree, Vernon sat silently. The sunset falling on the tired eyes of a man who had walked through hell. He did not cry. No more tears for the unnameable loss. But in that silence, he made his choice, closed the old chapter, and began to write the next. A part without Leslie, without darkness, only a fragile hope, and a belief that justice, however late, could still be present. Winter passed silently. Vernon tried to return to normal life, but in his mind, the silence was a sign of an approaching storm. Nicole was still there, living in the shell of a girl whose trust had been broken. She did not leave her room more than a few steps a day. Vernon hired a personal therapist, designed a small garden on the balcony for her to see flowers every morning, but in Nicole's eyes, the only thing that remained was emptiness. Vernon tormented himself. Even though he had punished Leslie, the damage his daughter had suffered could not be repaired. And then, he realized. A new nightmare began to creep back. Leslie was not dead. Nor was she completely insane as everyone thought. Inside the asylum, she remained silent, pretending to be insane. Only babbling nonsense and not responding to any examination. But behind her lifeless eyes was a mind that was meticulously planning. Leslie refused to be a loser. And even less to be turned into a toy for Vernon's rage. In her heart, the humiliation was not only of being imprisoned, but of being forced to face the monster inside her. She vowed that Vernon would pay, not just in blood, but in losing everything he had left in his life. 3 months later, Leslie escaped the asylum. A small fire was set in the inpatient ward. And amid the chaos, she disappeared as if she had never existed. The police assumed she had died in the fire, and no one had found her body. But Vernon didn't believe it. When the news hit the papers, he felt a chill run down his spine. He knew Leslie better than anyone. She wouldn't die that easily, much less give up the chance for revenge. He tightened security around the house, installing 6 cameras, 3 layers of locks, and even motion sensors. But Vernon knew better. Leslie wasn't the type to attack head-on. She was like a poison, creeping in slowly, colorless, odorless, shapeless, leaving its effects only after it had seeped into every corner of life. A few weeks later, Nicole began to receive anonymous emails. There was no content, just old pictures, childhood photos of her and Vernon, private moments that only loved ones would keep. Sometimes it was a recording of Vernon rocking her baby to sleep when she was a baby. None of that was available online, and Nicole began to panic. She doesn't tell Vernon, thinking she's delusional. But Vernon finds out when a doctored video is sent to his phone. It shows Vernon torturing someone, creating a haunting fake scene. Vernon realizes this is the beginning of a campaign of psychological destruction. Leslie is back, not with a knife, not with a gun, but with technology, intelligence, and absolute coldness. She destroys every relationship around Vernon. His friends receive anonymous letters accusing Vernon of assaulting prisoners while serving in the army. Fake photos. Fake reports, all of it gradually destroys his reputation. A former colleague commits suicide after receiving a threatening letter from a stranger, which reads, "Because you protected Vernon, now you will pay." Vernon frantically searches for Leslie's whereabouts. He returned to the mental hospital, scraping every file, scanning every surveillance log, but nothing. Every trace seemed to be erased. He hired a professional hacker, a former spy named Saul, to follow the digital trail of Nicole's emails. And then they found the last signal, an abandoned motel deep in the woods that had been a wartime sanatorium. Vernon steps into the darkness once more. But this time not to seek revenge, but to protect. He knows that Leslie's next target is Nicole. She no longer wants to hurt, she wants to steal, to turn Nicole into a twisted copy of herself. In Vernon's mind, a crazy scenario plays out. Leslie is no longer human, she is a symbol of irreversible corruption, and the only way to end her is to end her once and for all. But when Vernon reaches the hideout, he doesn't find Leslie. Instead, he finds a dark room with hundreds of photos of Nicole plastered to the walls, with detailed notes about her habits, her hours, and even her high school essays printed out. In the middle of the room is an open music box, the melody Vernon used to sing to his 5-year-old daughter. Inside the box is a handwritten note. "I'm losing her again." Vernon runs home, but Nicole is gone. The nightmare begins again. Vernon is no longer a man with a thirst for revenge, he is now a father facing a bottomless abyss. Knowing that his enemy is not simply a crazy woman, but a dark tornado that can sweep everything away. He vows that if he has one last time, he will not only stop Leslie. He will erase her from the world, not out of hatred, but for the survival of the only thing he has left, his love for Nicole. Don't miss anything. Subscribe and follow the channel today to discover the most dramatic and attractive stories with us.